Today I'll be focusing on a major waste culprit in the food industry as well as in home kitchens: the plastic wrap. In thinking about alternatives to plastic in our own home, especially those that are disposable and single-use, we can look to a very small friend of mine for a solution. My small friend is the honeybee. I'm going to meet you in my apiary to discuss how the honeybee can share this amazing, sustainable solution with us. I'm sure you've used plastic or saran wrap before to store leftovers, wrap up unused portions of veggies, and to cover prepared foods. But did you know that plastic wrap is in fact plastic, and not a very friendly one at that? Last year, 5.3 million Americans used 10 or more rolls of plastic wrap, and the bad news is that plastic wrap is rarely recycled because it can clog machinery. When left in the landfill, it releases toxic compounds into the environment. And often plastic wrap finds its way into the oceans where animals mistake it for a meal. Working with bees for the last 10 years, I have observed many spectacular feats and accomplishments, especially given how small they are. We are all familiar with honey, but what about beeswax? Beeswax is what makes up the comb of the hive, which houses their babies, pollen, honey, and is essentially their shelter. Bees are like magicians in how they make beeswax. After eating enough honey, the bee can initiate sheets of pliable wax material to secrete from glands on her abdomen. The bee quickly rolls it up into a ball with her hands and then molds the wax into hexagon shapes with her sisters. That's amazing, but what does this have to do with plastic wrap? Well, at certain stages of a colony's life, beekeepers are able to harvest beeswax from the hive, melt it down, filter it, and create beeswax bricks of all sizes. From these bricks of wax, you can make beeswax wrappers that can replace plastic wrap. Beeswax wraps are sticky, pliable, and the best part is that it is reusable and easy to make at home. So I hope you found the honeybees inspiring. We're back here in my kitchen. I'm going to show you the ingredients and materials that you need to make your own wraps. And we'll go over two methods. You're going to be well on your way to reducing a lot of plastic from your home. Just wanted to demonstrate to you the beeswax wrap is just great for molding to different sized containers, so that helps to keep things fresh. The first thing you need is cotton fabric. I typically use old bedding that I've retired. I use 100% cotton in my home and organic cotton. Cut it into different sizes. This is a little bit smaller to wrap around, like a half a lemon when you're done using it. This one is the same size as the first one I showed you, so a little bit larger to cover bigger bowls. The next thing you need is beeswax, of course. Unless you're a beekeeper and harvesting wax from your own hive, you can purchase beeswax on Etsy. You can buy beeswax in big chunks like this. This is the shape that particular beekeeper used, or the mold, or you can buy beeswax in little flakes called pastilles. Then we need oil. So you can choose from sunflower, jojoba, or olive. The oil allows us to have this pliability with the beeswax. If we were to just melt straight beeswax, when it hardens, it becomes really rigid, and if we were to bend our fabric, it would just crack. So the oil gives us this pliability that we're looking for, in this like kind of bendy shape that this wrap has. So then you'll need a dedicated brush for this project. This will have beeswax in it, so you may not want to use it on your food. Of course, a measuring spoon and a popsicle stick for stirring. You'll need a cookie sheet with parchment on it. So this is the size I'm using, but you can also use, of course, a regular cookie sheet. The parchment, again, you can reuse over and over and over and over, so don't throw it away after one use. Actually, there is one more thing that I will add. A kitchen scale. This will help you weigh out the beeswax that you need. So I have some cut up beeswax here. You can start with an ounce and kind of get the hang of how much is appropriate for the size fabric that you're using. I'm just going to place my fabric And then I'm going to sprinkle the beeswax on here. So my oven is preheated at 200 degrees and I'm gonna pop it in there for about 3 minutes. Okay, I just took the wrap out and I started with 3 minutes, but I bumped it up to 7. So just kind of play with it to see which works for your oven. It happens really fast where the wax hardens. So I'm gonna pop it back in the oven so it can melt. And what I wanna do is spread the wax around to all of the edges. Okay, so this is looking a little more melted here. So what I'm gonna do is use my brush to again, can pick up some of this wax here and get my edges finished. I'm pretty satisfied with this. I'm gonna let it dry. It dries pretty fast, so you can see it's already like taking that shape of a beeswax wrap. So this is gonna dry and then we'll test it out on one of our containers in a little bit. This next method requires the choice of your oil and a double boiler, which is a pot with hot water and then a glass bowl on top. So this allows you to melt ingredients without burning them. To create this mixture, I would suggest you start out with 1 tablespoon of oil to 1 ounce of beeswax and put that in your double boiler, let it melt for about 20 minutes till it's a liquid. Something to keep in mind is that it's easier to be conservative with the application of the mixture than to be aggressive and oversaturate the fabric. So if it's oversaturated, it's not really going to bend and be pliable like we're looking for. So be conservative in the beginning, and you can do more than 1 application on the same fabric if that's what you need. I have my cookie sheet and my fabric. You want to get all of the edges. It's okay if it starts to harden as you're doing this. It's going to go in the oven and then redistribute. Use your brush again to move the beeswax around. I just had this in my demo size oven, so we can pick it up and kind of take a look at it. There's extra beeswax on the parchment, but this looks pretty great. When you feel this, you can already feel that like pliability. It feels a little different than the wrap that has just the wax with it. So I'm gonna let this cool down and then we're gonna give it a test around one of our containers. Okay, so moment of truth here. We have our wrap with just the beeswax and the wrap with beeswax and oil. So you can see that the one with just the beeswax doesn't quite stick to the container shape that we need it to. So I recommend if you're using those, if you're creating those, that you can use it for veggies, any kind of ingredients that need to be stored, because that kind of seals itself really nicely and then you can store your unused portions. This one with the oil actually works really well. Especially with the warmth of your hands, it kind of warms up the wax a little bit, and you can see that it sticks to the bowl, which is what we want for saving food. So a few troubleshooting items. If your beeswax wrap gets dirty or has any kind of fruit juice or any staining happening, you can simply wipe it with a damp sponge. Overuse, you can always add another layer of beeswax and pop it in the oven just like you did to make it in the first place to refresh it. And also, when you're working with beeswax and melting it, keep your windows shut because you might entice some honeybees to come check out. They have great sense of smell. So if you don't want any visitors, close your windows when you're working with beeswax.